What's cracking, everybody? It's Chaos Dubs here, and today we're doing something totally different. This video is going to be part of our Maker playlist for those of you who want to expand your knowledge at our expense. It's going to focus a lot on the thought process and how we navigate these types of challenges, so buckle up. We are revolutionizing an industry by creating a whole new product, and this mini-series is all about the process. We're going to focus on the process of creation, design, learning, and research, and how we make it all work. Today's episode is going to focus mainly on how I picked my 3D printers and what you should look for in a printer, plus some other stuff. Despite the lack of excitement surrounding the product itself, as it's designed to mostly not be seen, this has been a fun and interesting process, and through this, we have learned a lot. As for the product itself, we won't be showing or discussing it as we have not yet patented it, but I will give you as many details as I can and take you along on the adventure as we design, create, and refine our design. I'm going to start this video off with a bit of a personal side note before we get into the nitty-gritty details. Stick with me, I'm going to be vulnerable here for a minute. As a subscriber or a viewer returning to the channel, you may notice a striking change in my voice. As some of you may or may not know, I am transgender and have been going through this process for quite some time with less than great results. More than 10 years actually. But things are finally looking up. After many years of discouraging results and fighting myself and the medical system, finally some major progress, self-reflection, and healing of trauma has been happening in my life. Since I've been working on myself, I've begun to live outside of survival mode and I've been able to focus on making my life better. This has allowed me the freedom and mental capacity to focus more on bringing my body and my mind into synchronicity, and overall has so far had a major positive impact on my daily life by fueling me with self-confidence, self-worth, and the drive to match on the outside how I feel on the inside. Although it may be a bit of a shock for you and quite the challenge for me, I know my voice may not be perfect or quite where I want it to be, but this is the start of progress towards my goal that I've had for most of my life, and this is something we're going to need to get used to together. So look forward to many improvements over the next little while. I usually don't mention too much about my personal situation, and specifically I haven't really talked about my trans femme experience, but I feel it may be something worth implementing either here or even on my other channel, Chaos Dubs, or maybe even on Rumble where I can't be so easily silenced. I know this may not be interesting or relevant to everybody, but I also know that there are people who can be helped by the content and by hearing my story, and others yet who would like to get to know the pirates on a deeper, more intimate level. So if it makes a difference to you, I am not a liberal, and kids should not be involved with any of this gender transition stuff, drag shows, or any of that stuff, and I have a lot of opinions and advice related to transition, my story, my struggles, and how the world is going that may be interesting to hear. If this is something you would like to see talked about more and explored in more depth, please let us know in the comments below. For now, let's dig into this content. This series is going to focus on the steps that we have taken to design and develop a product and the processes surrounding it, including understanding, finding, and working with 3D printers and 3D design software. This product development began several years ago with a simple sketch on a napkin created by Mike himself to assist in his day job. The napkin sketch design was sent to a manufacturing company specializing in large batch injection mold manufacturing, where a large order of the first generation of these products was placed and added to the company's inventory. The company would place more large orders as necessary about once a year. Recently, the company doing the injection molding was sold to a larger corporation who only caters to industrial-sized batches, leaving Mike's company stranded with no ability to place more appropriately sized orders. Not only this, but the design that was being used was less than perfect for a list of reasons, and to change the design would require making more large orders, even just for an experiment. I began experimenting with 3D printing about a year ago after researching and choosing a printer that fit my needs, capabilities, and price range, which I will go into more detail about later on. Mike fielded the idea to me near the tail end of last year and gave me some samples to recreate in my 3D design software, where I promptly got to work attempting to replicate the products that were already being used by the company. One of the most incredible things about using 3D printers and doing the design in-house is the ability to modify the design on a granular level, as in, changes can be made on very small batches as developments are made and needs change. As well, it's much easier to ensure an incredibly high level of quality control due to the small batch nature of the medium that we are working in. there was more than a few challenges standing in our way. Similar to our experiments with Alaskan milling over the last 2 seasons, we have had to overcome a learning curve and develop a system that works time after time without a lot of user input and minimal finishing processing required. Between learning how to use a 3D printer and navigating the process to get consistent and repeatable results, to designing and redesigning our product, experimenting with filaments, upgrading printers, growing the printer farm, and more, we have made an immense amount of progress. You're going to see exactly how we made this all a reality. And as I said, this is going to be a different type of video than what you may be used to, so feel free to let us know in the comments what you think about this format and our level of clarity in sharing this information with you. And be sure to stay up to date as we are dropping 2 videos per week currently, so you can expect a mix of content from us. Let's move on to Chapter 2. The drive to get into 3D printing was mostly natural for me, as I am a maker, creator, designer, and someone who prefers to be able to solve a problem by any means necessary. This drove me to do some research and begin to understand the different types of printers that are on the market, the abilities they have, the differences and similarities that they share, and at least take those first steps to introduce a new aspect to making things in-house. It really is a game changer when you can wake up with a problem that needs a solution, then in the morning, hop into your CAD program, design something that may or may not work, and by the afternoon, you have a completed part in your hand ready for testing. Of course, as I'm sure you can imagine, there's a lot more to it than just setting up a printer and making something right out of the box. Because of the extensive amount of information regarding 3D printer setup, troubleshooting, and general minutiae of the art being easily accessible online, we're not going to dig too deep into the basics in this mini-series. But what you will find in this regard is solutions to specific problems related directly to the 2 models of printers which we are using for this process, and how to avoid them, remedy them, and get your parts coming out great, professional looking, and finished even on a mass production scale. So let's talk about printers, shall we? With so many different printers on the market, it can seem daunting for a curious maker to grasp all of the necessary specs, terminology, and concepts that come along with it. But I assure you, for anyone of average or greater intelligence, 3D printing will become a relatively simple concept to grasp, and you will become proficient in no time. I will take you through my thought process on how I settled on the printers I chose, and why I think everyone who is new to 3D printing should look no further than these machines. Without going into too much detail, there are basically 2 types of consumer-grade 3D printers that are available, which use a roll of filament to print your items, and these are known as FDM printers, or Fused Deposition Modeling, for those of you who are curious. There are indeed other types, such as resin printers and industrial-scale metal printers that work in a pit of sand rather than open air, to name just a couple, but all of that is beyond the scope of this video and this process. The 2 types of FDM 3D printers that you will encounter are either a Bowden extruder, which we will only briefly touch on, or direct drive, which we will be detailing in more depth. The Bowden extruder printers are a bit more economical when first starting out, but they have some caveats that will limit their capabilities and speed and restrict your material choices down to just a few. The main issue here lies in the method of feeding the filament into the nozzle. With the Bowden tube, as the name implies, there is indeed a tube which houses your filament as it is driven from the extruder mechanism, which is usually located on one side of the printer, into your nozzle, which sits several inches away, hovering over the print bed surface. This can work great in some applications using stiff materials, and it can even produce pretty great results. But due to the nature of the drive system, which is identical in operation to a standard flux core or MIG welder, it is quite difficult to experiment and work with softer materials, as you will have feeding issues pretty quickly unless great care is taken to ensure things are just perfect. In both cases, some folks report having success when they are dialed in just right, while in our case, even using the correct printer had us facing unexpected challenges that may have rendered the Bowden 2 printers a waste of money altogether. This is why we use and recommend anyone else to use direct drive 3D printers. After extensive research and testing, I believe that this is where anyone should start when getting into this world. The welder's solution to this problem is what we call a spool gun. This puts the roll of soft aluminum wire in a gun in the operator's hand rather than in the machine. This is the same idea with a direct drive printer. The spool hangs off the printer and is fed by the printer head directly into the nozzle with almost no distance between the two. This literally bridges the gap and allows the use of much more flexible materials, more precision, higher printing speeds, and the ability to enjoy an overall better 3D printing experience. But this is not all that I was focused on when purchasing my first printer. Knowing a few friends who have been into 3D printing for several years, I have heard consistent complaints about manual leveling to ensure continuity across the entire surface being a real pain in the ass, and bowed and tube feeding troubles as well, so I wanted to be sure that the printer I was going to purchase had auto bed leveling of some sort, as well as a direct drive head. I settled on the Sovol brand of printers due to the overwhelmingly positive reviews, the enhanced capabilities offered in comparison to other brands' similar machines, and the price point being more reasonable due to the lesser known name of the brand. My first printer was the Sovol SV06, which has these features as a standard and was under $400, kind of right in the middle of the road for cost as well as print speed and features. This printer served me well as I learned and experimented with the capabilities, and in my opinion was the perfect platform to begin this journey on. I would highly recommend any eager makers who want to dip into the wonderful world of 3D to seriously consider the Sovol brand, and more specifically this particular model, the SV06. This is not a sponsored video, I just really like these printers and the print quality and the value that they offer. As we began the production process, which we'll talk more about later on, there was a killer deal on Sovol printers, and I saw this new version had much faster printing speed, better extruder capabilities, and enhanced material flow due to a longer hot end, so I decided without much research to grab what I thought was Sovol's new and improved version of the SV06, the SV07. Little did I know that this would be another huge leap into something new, as it was not only a revision or iteration of the SV06, but a completely different flavor of direct drive 3D printer altogether. This printer does away with the basic screen and manual input of the SV06 and adds the clipper unit complete with touchscreen capability, Wi-Fi connected and PC-based printer management, and the ability to add a camera to watch your prints come to life while you're on the go, just to name a few. It's also known as a bed slinger due to the differences in the print bed motion mechanism, which when coupled with the upgraded and enhanced direct drive extruder, which is a step above the SV06, can print at incredible speeds of 500mm a second. So for those of you who may not understand exactly what that means in relation to other printers, including the SV06, this is approximately 5 to 10 times the speed of standard printing achieved with non-bed slinger and bowed and tube style printers. Of course, there are many variables that can make these numbers bend and change, and it's not to say people aren't printing faster than the 50mm a second on standard printers, but based on claimed printer specs and average print speed, this should give you a better idea of how much faster the SV07 really is. The extra features and increased speed of the SV07 is great to have once you have some experience with 3D printing, but it does add levels of complexity and extra failure points to the experience. Yes, you do have more control, but you also have a more complex but more precise leveling procedure, many more settings, and a nearly overwhelming amount of unnecessary and possibly distracting features, which is why I do not recommend a new user starting out with an SV07. If you are new, I would recommend you start with an SV06, save some money on the initial purchase, save some headaches in the learning process, and learn how to print consistently, and then if you choose, you can upgrade your SV06 by either swapping the printer head to the SV07 head, giving you the ability to print more material at a time, more consistently, and at a much higher speed than the standard SV06, and or upgrading the system to the Clipper touchscreen system, giving you the aforementioned Wi-Fi capabilities and super user level control. Both of these upgrades would bring the capabilities of your SV06 close to that of an SV07, and by that time, you may already be looking for a second printer. This shit is super addictive. This is going to conclude part 1 of this series, as we are already going pretty long and laying out a lot of information. In part 2, we're going to delve deeper into the thought process, creation, and problem solving that we undertook to choose the correct filament, refine the design, and bring these ideas to life. Have something to say? Let me know in the comments. If you stuck with me to the end of the video, thanks for watching me and putting up with me practicing my voice, and stick around for more. Like, share, subscribe, and check out these related videos. You just might like them.